This is your reality check.
Hi everyone, and welcome to The Reality Check, the weekly Canadian show that explores a wide range of controversies and curiosities using science and critical thinking. This is the show for November 6th, 2018, and I am your host, Darren McKee. With me, as usual, are Adam Gardner.
What's up, Cuboids?
Christina Roach.
Hey everyone.
And producer Pat.
Hi, checkers.
We have a great show for you today. First, Adam's going to do a little follow-up to the Toronto Sun Anti-Vax article that he covered recently.
That's right.
And next, Christina will look at beauty product claims. Then I will continue with my brief history of life with the Precambrian, or maybe pre-Precambrian. And then finally, Adam is going to look into whether Donald Trump's children are anchor babies.
That's right.
But first, all of us at the show just want to say a big thank you to everyone who supported the show through donating in general or through Patreon. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Now, Adam, is there more anti-vax news in the news?
Yeah, I just wanted to start out with a quick follow-up to what I talked about last week now, as many of you remember, because it wasn't long ago. I did a segment covering a pretty horrible article appearing in the Toronto Sun. This article repeated some popular yet demonstrably false claims about vaccines, such as them causing autism and SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, and that vitamin C would prevent the flu. Now, this is true. The article was removed from the website, but not after many had already seen and read it. Some good news to follow this up. What more could one hope for than a bad article promoting pseudoscience being taken down? Well, aside from it not having been published in the first place, something we currently can't fix due to the nature of time, a retraction of some sort could always be nice. Well, the Toronto Sun did the next best thing and published a follow-up opinion article, ironically titled, Opinion. Facts matter more than opinion when it comes to vaccines. This fantastic piece was written by Dr. W. Glenn Pyle, a professor in the Department of Biomedical Sciences at the University of Guelph, who had a much more evidence-based view of the world than Dr. W. Gifford Jones does. Dr. Pyle breaks down just how wrong the anti-vax article was, dispelling the myth of the link between vaccines and autism, explaining how aluminum in vaccines is not that abundant and not abundant enough to be toxic, and showing that there's no link between vaccines and SIDS. The article was great and the kind of science and evidence-based science reporting we want to see in the media. Good job, Dr. Pyle, and good on the Toronto Sun for somewhat salvaging a bad situation.
Indeed.
Yes. I think positive actions should be rewarded. So,
yeah,
good stuff. And now, on to the world of beauty products, where they never, ever make any unsubstantiated claims. Isn't that right, Christina?
A couple of weekends ago, I was in New York City with girlfriends, and while we were in a Sephora, which is a popular cosmetics and beauty-related products chain, one of my friends asked me about the validity of beauty product claims. Now, as I told her many moons ago, before I was a regular on TRC, I filled in for Elon and did a segment about it on episode 242. So it was certainly worth revisiting, especially since I get asked about it a lot as the resident friend on a critical thinking podcast. So my inspiration at the time was an article I came across about a pricey face cream called Crème de la Mer, which is French for cream of the sea. A 2-ounce jar of this stuff retails for around $325 US in high-end department stores like Barney's and Saks. Now, the original article titled, Is Crème de la Mer Just a Giant Scam?, highlighted that while the company literature boasts miracle-like results, the type of data that impresses scientists and skeptics, like large-scale, peer-reviewed, double-blind clinical trials, notably absent. Now, as Tim Caulfield says in a great article he did for The Atlantic called The Pseudoscience of Beauty Products, there's very little literature produced by independent researchers and either no data or only small studies produced by proponents of beauty products. Now, many skin care experts and bloggers often point out that the ingredients in La Mer cream don't justify the price tag. No kidding. For example, one of the main ingredients is mineral oil, which you can purchase on Amazon for $20 a gallon. And another is petrolatum, which is essentially Vaseline, which you can buy at any drugstore. Now, the Daily Mail newspaper even hired a cosmetic chemist, Will Buchanan, in 2010 for a month-long investigation into the beauty cream, and he ascertained the ingredients cost about $20. Now, this made me ponder what other cosmetic product claims do we take at face value that are in fact misleading or straight up BS. A 2015 Daily Mail article highlighted a study by researchers at Georgia's Valdosta State University and the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, who looked at 289 various full-page beauty ads and found that only 14% of the scientific claims made about a product were acceptable. Around a quarter of claims made in the ads about wrinkle creams were dubbed outright lies. We collectively spend a lot of buck dollars on beauty products, checkers. According to the U.S. Department of Commerce, Americans spend $33.3 billion on cosmetic products in 2010 alone.
Wow.
And according to Health Canada, Canadians spend more than $5 billion on cosmetics each year. Before I get into debunking mode, let's define cosmetics so we're clear what it entails. Now, on the Government of Canada's website, a cosmetic is defined as, quote, any substance used to clean, improve, or change the complexion, skin, hair, nails, or teeth. Cosmetics include beauty preparations, makeup, perfume, skin cream, nail polish, and grooming aids. Some products that seem to be cosmetics may be classified differently and managed by different programs at Health Canada, so a beauty product or grooming aid can be legally classified as a drug if it makes any claims to modify body functions or to prevent or treat disease. So a quick example is a facial cleanser for acne. So they can make a therapeutic claim that it prevents and kills acne bacteria because it contains the active drug ingredient benzoyl peroxide, which is backed by science, along with a drug identification number, aka DIN. Similarly, in the U.S., the FD&C Act, which is the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, classifies cosmetics as, quote, articles intended to be rubbed, poured, sprinkled, or sprayed on, introduced into or otherwise applied to the human body for cleansing, beautifying, promoting attractiveness, or altering the appearance. So in short, any product that enhances the appearance of skin is cosmetic. So to recap, whether a product is considered a cosmetic or a drug under the law is determined by a product's intended use, and there are also products that meet the definition of both cosmetics and drugs. The alarming thing is, for an industry that makes a lot of claims in order to justify what they charge a consumer, there is surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, little regulation or accepted product testing. Now, under the U.S. FD&C Act, quote, cosmetic products and ingredients, with the exception of color additives, do not require FDA approval before they go on the market. So it's actually the manufacturer's responsibility to make sure that their products are safe. The FDA doesn't police these types of products rigorously because they're cosmetics and it's not medicine. But there are rules that companies need to adhere to when marketing or advertising their products. Now in Canada, cosmetic products are subject to the provisions of the Food and Drug Act and its cosmetic regulations regarding composition, safety, labeling, and advertising, which also have rules about acceptable versus unacceptable claims. So here's a quick example. Claim. Our shampoo makes your hair soft and healthy looking. This is acceptable because it describes healthy hair in terms of the appearance. Claim, our shampoo makes your hair grow. Not acceptable because it attributes a therapeutic effect to the product. Now, another example listed in the guidelines is in reference to skin. It is acceptable to say, reduces the appearance of aging or reduces the signs of aging because it refers to the visibility of the skin. But a company cannot claim that a product actually reduces aging or slows aging or reverses aging. Anything that changes the structure of the skin is considered a drug. So I could easily do 10 segments or more on the cosmetic industry, but I just want to tackle some of the product claims most of us would be familiar with and may be fooled by. Chemical-free. Perry Romanowski says in his article, The 10 Most Misleading Cosmetic Claims on Chemist Corner's blog, quote, every cosmetic or personal care product you buy is made of chemicals. There is no such thing as a chemical-free cosmetic. Water is a chemical. Titanium dioxide is a chemical. That's an inert earth mineral commonly found in sunscreen. The implication is that the product is somehow safer than cosmetics made with chemicals, which is just incorrect. Natural, organic, green, etc. You're hearing about this more and more. Now, the implication is that any product labeled natural or organic is somehow safer than other cosmetics, but this is simply not true. This label can literally mean anything because, once again, there is no one definition for natural. A company could argue that a naturally sourced product justifies the label natural, but what they conveniently gloss over, as Romanowski says, is that they have to chemically modify it to make it work the way they want it.
Yeah, it's always going to be a transformed product to some extent, unless you're buying water or something like that, right?
Well, as for organic, there may be a USDA organic certification program, but a cosmetic company doesn't have to follow it in order to slap the term organic on its products.
Because it's not a food or a drug.
Right.
Basically, right?
Hypoallergenic. Now, this term is used a lot. I'm sure you guys have seen this and heard of it. It's used in reference to moisturizers, skin lotions, and the implication is that the product is better for people with sensitive or allergy-prone skin. Now, I, for one, took this term seriously before I knew better. There are no regulations, guidelines, or accepted testing methods for determining whether or not a product qualifies as being hypoallergenic.
Now, what about things like products for babies, right? You got wipes, you got diapers, you got creams that are more or less, irritant, things that are a little more graded for newborns. Is that...
Any product that's labeled hypoallergenic, Adam...
So that claim itself is not really...
Yeah.
I guess it's not really a hypoallergenic issue with a baby because it's not really an allergy. It's just a sensitive skin type of thing, right?
Right.
To be fair, some people are allergic to babies.
But just to be clear, anything labeled hypoallergenic may still contain ingredients that will trigger breakouts or skin reactions in certain people. So the term's meaningless. It can mean whatever company wants it to. You have to read the ingredients to see if there's anything in there that you're allergic to.
Because there's no real single uniform allergic reaction that people have, right? Everyone's got, different kind of people have different kind of reactions to different products and different chemicals, right?
I always think about when we had Dr. David Stuckis on.
Yes.
And he said, one of the things that bothers him more than almost anything else is the idea of a hypoallergenic dog.
Dogs, that's
And he
right.
just said it doesn't exist. It's utter nonsense.
Yeah.
Which is funny because I have a Siberian cat who is said to be hypoallergenic, and I don't know if that's true. Based on what he says, it sounds like it's not.
I think he said it was the dander, which both cats and dogs are going to always have. So
yeah.
Well, maybe we shall go back and re-listen to Dr. Stuckis's interview segments.
Or have him back on.
Or have him back on, even better.
It's a good one. I fed my baby peanut butter while I listened to that interview. It was
good for you. Dermatologist recommended or dermatologist tested. A dermatologist is a doctor who specializes in the physiology and pathology of the skin. This claim implies that a product has been given the thumbs up by a professional, but this is just another popular term in the cosmetic industry that sounds official, but it is not supported by any agreed on standards. There are no set rules in which a dermatologist has to adhere to in order to recommend a product. And a company may have a dermatologist on the payroll, for instance, who quote-unquote approves products or designs studies to make sure the cosmetic company's claims are substantiated. Cosmeceuticals. This is one of my favorites. It is absolutely made up and meaningless. The implication is that the product has some sort of pharmaceutical or medical benefit, but the FD&C Act does not recognize any such category as cosmeceutical. As I mentioned earlier, a beauty product can be a drug, a cosmetic, or a combination of both, but the term cosmeceutical has no meaning under the law. Now, the same goes with the overall claim slapped onto products starting with the word helps, and you see this a lot. Although it's illegal to claim a cosmetic product directly fixes a problem, like strengthens the skin's barriers function, adding the qualifying word helps in front of the word strengthen, perfectly cool. The implication is it will somehow fix your skin even though there's no evidence supporting the claim, but adding the word helps allows a company to make the claim without having evidence to back it up. So the moral here is be an informed consumer, or as our friend Elon would say, don't be a fool, be skeptical. Take cosmetic claims with a big grain of salt and check that the products you buy contain ingredients backed by credible research and proven to be effective and safe for your skin.
Thanks, Cristina, for an important segment, although it can be a bit depressing. Sometimes, like life itself, or the history of life. 2 episodes ago, I did a brief history of the early Earth, which set up a discussion for the evolution of life, which will then enable me to discuss extinctions in more detail. So I'm going to continue now with my discussion of the evolution of life on Earth. But before that, I would just like to read a short message we got from our favorite astronomer, Dr. Stewart. And he said that, well, apparently there is no evidence whatsoever for the late heavy bombardment. He called it fake news, actually. And that's the message I wanted to convey. There's no current evidence. It doesn't mean it didn't happen, but the evidence upon which it was based is now broadly agreed to be severely flawed. He provided a lot more interesting detail, and we think we should have him on the show in the future to discuss it himself because he knows more than I do.
So is the idea that we have an illusion that there was a certain bombardment that may just be related to when things were formed and when the moon was formed and things like that?
It's the issue is that to date some of the samples, you have to use certain radiometric methods.
Yep.
And those are not as reliable as people thought.
Because it's in the billions of years.
Right.
It's hard
but I don't want to say more, lest he'll write in again.
All right. Look forward to hearing from you, Stuart.
So today, I thought I would cover up to about 1 billion years ago when multicellular life begins. Mm-hmm. But I'm still going to start from where I left off, which is about 3.5 billion years ago. One more caveat again. While researching the segment, I was reminded once again how I'm not an expert and there are many issues under debate, and even terms might be misleading. More on that later. Mm-hmm. So we left off around 3.5 billion years ago. The Earth has a crust, rock has formed, and we have a magnetic field.
All right.
Yay! Life exists, and it might have for hundreds of millions of years. Different chemicals and elements in different rock formations are suggestive, such as graphite in 3.7 billion-year-old meta-sedimentary rocks discovered in western Greenland. But the earliest direct evidence of life on Earth are microfossils of microorganisms in 3.5 billion-year-old Australian apex chert rocks. What kind of microorganisms are we talking about here? These would be labeled as prokaryotes, single-celled or unicellular organisms, all meaning the same thing here. A prokaryote lacks a membrane-bound nucleus, or mitochondria or organelles for that matter. In prokaryotes, all the intercellular water-soluble components, your proteins, your DNA, and your metabolites, are located together in the cytoplasm enclosed by the cell membrane, rather than in separate cellular compartments. I'm not a biologist. It just means that in our current cellular structures, because we're eukaryotic, that there are these different little parts that contain all these pieces. They aren't just floating around all together. Or they are, but they're contained within themselves. That is not the case for prokaryotes. Anyway, these first prokaryotes, which were supposedly chemoautotrophs, meaning in this case that they use carbon dioxide as a carbon source and oxidize inorganic materials to extract energy. Later, the prokaryotes evolved glycolysis, a set of chemical reactions that free the energy of organic molecules such as glucose and store it in the chemical bonds of ATP, adenosine triphosphate.
That's the beginning of candy.
Something like that. Glycolysis and ATP continue to be used in almost all organisms, unchanged to this day. And that's kind of interesting. Like, the royal ancestral we of our microorganisms stumbled upon a certain energetic extraction pathway. You're like, yeah, well, we just hold on to that for 3.5 billion years more.
So Halloween was really fun because of glycolysis. Like, that's really what it comes down to.
I think that is the most accurate description of Halloween and its happiness. I believe that's what the recent movie was about. It is interesting to think of how to extract energy from the environment to be able to do things at such a basic level.
Yeah.
As humans, we're like, oh yeah, I'll just, use energy, like boil water, plug something into the wall. Like, well, no, but at a basic level, how do you extract energy? Like, well, I just eat food. Like, no, but how? How? At a deeper level.
Stick to crabs and whatever, yeah.
Also, around 3.5 billion years ago was the lifetime of the last universal common ancestor, LUCA, or LUCA. This is also when the categories of bacteria and archaea split, for those biologists listening.
Doesn't she live on the second floor?
Well, oldest common ancestor.
I know, this is one thing that kind of makes your head
first living thing, the oldest common ancestor, but, yeah.
No, it's the oldest thing that they can trace back everything to.
Yeah, okay.
Correct.
Well, she lives upstairs from you.
I don't really get it, but I know it's something, and that makes me happy that you're happy, Pat. Okay. Around 3 billion years ago, viruses are present, but they might actually be older. As I said, there's a lot of variability, and perhaps a future segment is whether viruses are alive or not, but I just wanted to drop them in there. Around 2.4 billion years ago, and there's some debate whether this great oxidation event happened, meaning photosynthetic cyanobacteria might have produced oxygen as waste, which then started to build up in the atmosphere, which was poisonous. And people often talk about this as life causing its own destruction. But maybe not. As well, this oxygen in the atmosphere caused iron in the oceans to sink, forming bands. But then others think cyanobacteria came later and was some other bacteria that did this without the oxygen. Or maybe oxygen was there, but there were fewer methane-producing bacteria because methane reacts with oxygen. All that to say, something I grew up thinking is like these cyanobacteria are producing this output, and then that eventually kills them. You can have some rough analogy for how humans are living, and maybe we should be more careful. And perhaps that doesn't even work on the level of a good analogy. Mild interlude to say that around 2.3 billion years ago, the Earth freezes over. Oh well, I guess these things happen.
That's unfortunate.
After the thawing, we pick up the story about 2.15 billion years ago, where there is definitive evidence of photosynthesis and cyanobacteria. Hooray for sunlight and CO2 providing energy. Thanks, ancestors.
Yeah.
Now, when hearing about prokaryotes, you might have also heard of eukaryotes. That's an EUK. They are organisms whose cells have a membrane nucleus that is well-defined instead of all swimming around together. But they are still single-celled organisms at this time, first appearing around 2 billion years ago. They are cells with internal organs, for lack of a better term. To clarify, eukaryotes may also be multicellular and include organisms consisting of many cell types forming different kinds of tissues. Animals and plants are the most familiar eukaryotes, like us, but that doesn't happen until around 1 billion years ago. And I'm out of time again. Who knows what will happen next? Well, you're listening to this, so I guess humans will appear. But what about details? Tune in next time.
I look forward to an angry email that you'll get from Richard Dawkins this time.
That'd be great. That guy knows how to get angry.
You bet your boots you got it wrong.
I'd also love to hear from any listeners that got Pat's joke. That would bring me joy to hear from you. Thank you.
Speaking of life, and birth, and Donald Trump's children, and whether they might be anchor babies, Adam's here to bookend the show.
That's right, Darren. Would Donald Trump's many children, born to immigrant mothers, be U.S. citizens if it weren't for birthright citizenship? Now, last week, U.S. President Donald Trump stated that he planned on signing an executive order to revoke birthright citizenship in the United States. Birthright citizenship means that anyone born in the U.S. will be an American citizen, even if their parents are not. Now, this is sometimes referred to as anchor babies in the press, or I guess by people who are generally terrible. Following this, I saw someone make the following claim on a viral social media post. This is one I found on Snopes. It might not have been the actual one I saw, but the idea was basically the same. And I quote, "Fun fact, Barron Trump was born in March 2006, and Melania wasn't a legal citizen until July 2006. So under this executive order, his own son wouldn't be an American citizen. Wow, what a hypocrite that would make Donald Trump if it were true. But is it at all accurate? Well, let's tease this apart." Okay, I didn't tease anything apart. I just saw it on Snopes, but let's pretend I'm the one that's doing the hard work here. I originally saw it and I thought, oh, maybe that's true. I didn't really question it. Now, the dates mentioned do actually check out. Barron Trump was born on March 20th, 2006. His mother, Melania Trump, was born in Slovenia. And while she came to the U.S. in 1996, she did not get U.S. citizenship until 4 months after Barron Trump was born. Now, I saw a similar claim going around back in 2015 as Donald Trump questioned birthright citizenship while he was campaigning. At the time, he did not state that he would revoke birthright citizenship, but instead questioned whether it was itself legal. He claimed that it would take too long to change. I guess something changed his mind. The claim at this time was whether or not Donald Trump would deport his children in revoking their birthright citizenship. And that would be quite funny if that were true. In this case, this also included Donald Trump's children from his first marriage to Ivana Trump. Ivana Trump was born in Czechoslovakia. She moved to New York around 1976, and they married in April 1977. Donald Trump Jr., their first son, was born in December 1977. Now, Snopes doesn't really know the exact date in which Ivana Trump became a U.S. citizen, because such a thing wouldn't have been the subject of public scrutiny at the time. They weren't in the political spotlight. He was just a guy who built buildings and stuff. Now, all that said, that doesn't really matter, and I wonder if anyone on the show can pick out why none of this is relevant at all before I kind of take away the punch.
Because one of their parents is American?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So the fact that these children's mothers aren't U.S. citizens doesn't factor, as their father, Donald Trump, is a U.S. citizen, making the whole mental exercise a bit pointless.
I haven't seen his birth certificate. I just want to say.
Good point, Darren. Now, even if Barron Trump or any other of Trump's children were born outside the U.S., they could still be U.S. citizens if one of their parents, in this case their father, was in the U.S. for at least 5 years, including 2 years after age 14.
So this rumor actually grew legs and went around. People didn't even question it.
Well, I guess it's like you get...
Grew eggs like an anchor baby.
You get, like, focused on one point of the story that you don't, like, sort of take a moment to step back and see the big picture. Right. So I went and I found this original tweet that was quoted on Snopes, and I looked at all the responses, and they were all like, you idiot, his father's American, right? But yeah, if you think about it, it makes sense, but I guess, people don't... People just don't think about it like that sometimes. Now, none of this has any bearing on Tiffany Trump's citizenship, as her mother, Marla Maples, was born in the state of Georgia. Who's Tiffany Trump? Mm-hmm. Now, the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution is what grants birthright citizenship. This amendment was made in 1868, a few years after the end of the Civil War, to allow freed slaves to become citizens. Now, it's interesting to consider that birthright citizenship, referred to as just solely, is actually somewhat rare globally. Now, we have something similar here in Canada as well, but the number of countries that don't have such laws by far outnumber those that do.
Really?
A number of countries have repealed birthright citizenship in recent years, including Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, France, India, Malta, the United Kingdom, and Portugal.
Portugal!
Yeah, it's sort of hard to think about, but, in Europe, it almost seems, maybe it's something that's less popular in Europe, because then you really can just, like, cross a border easily and have a child anywhere, and then, your citizenship's kind of up in the air. But, it's easy for me as a Canadian to say, like, yes, this absolutely made sense, and for a lot of Americans to say, like, this just makes sense because it's something they've had, but it's just not the reality everywhere. I'm not going to say, like, it's a good thing or a bad thing, but that's just how it is. So no, Donald Trump's children would still be U.S. citizens if it weren't for birthright citizenship and the 14th Amendment. It doesn't matter that their mothers weren't U.S. citizens, as their father is, and I don't see anyone questioning the president's citizenship. What kind of jerk would question the president's citizenship anyway?
I don't know what you mean. Thanks, Adam. And thank you, listeners, for joining us once again. Adam did a little follow-up to the Toronto Sun, who happily posted a much better article about vaccines and how they're legitimate. Cristina warned us once again to be careful about, well, any claim, but beauty product claims in particular, because a lot of it is snake oil. You should check the claims on that as well. I gave you a little bit more of the history of life on Earth. Oh, we're in the eukaryotes and life is good. And then Adam looked into whether Donald Trump's children would be anchor babies, and no, they wouldn't, because he's an American. Until next time, think better to act better. Peace out, Q-Boys.
Stay classy, not smartassy.
The fax machine's nothing but a waffle iron with a phone attached.
For show notes, or to discuss this episode, visit our Facebook page and website at trcpodcast.com. For general inquiries, or to send a topic or parody suggestion, email info@trcpodcast.com. Help support the show by leaving a review on iTunes and liking us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at TRC_podcast.
Oh, thanks.
Want to support us on Patreon and have made a contribution? We really appreciate it.
Patreon.
I know.
Like,
as I said,
everyone says Patreon, then he says,
I know.
Patreon.
Hey, I'm not a perfect man.
Support us on Patreon and on with donations.
Oh, I know
on
what
the
he
page.
could do. I just haven't. I've been editing the show for an hour and we haven't started yet.
Pat, do you want to address this glitchiness or not? You just think that on their end it's taping fine. It's just
with my magic wand.
Yeah, I guess so.
This person popular before or after MC Hammer?
The Hammer continuum. All right.
I don't know if you saw the video I sent you, but it's got 35 million views.
Gangnam Style thinks that's like nothing.
That's so funny.
Nice.
Pat is so old, he thinks 35 million views is special.